Mr. Chair, we may begin.
Sounds good. We will begin. Everybody, welcome to our Green Committee meeting. We can begin with the roll call.
Dr. Gilliam.
Present. I'm sorry, I was on mute. I'm sorry. Dr. Gilliam. Still present. Mr. Weinstein. Corey O'Connor.
Here. All right, that takes us into our informational items. There are 4 items. A is program status, B is financial update, C is the GROW project performance, and D is the Cycle 7 program guidelines. I figured I'd just read the top because I'm sure Tim will go through all of them. So I will pass it off to Tim.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a quick request. Can everyone see the meeting agenda on their screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Perfect. I'd like to start this informational item with the GROW program implementation status. Through cycles 1 through 5, we had 137 projects. Back in September, we awarded another 15 projects. And so now we are up to 152 projects in GROW. Of those, this is where all the projects lie within their characterization. We have 16 projects that rescinded or declined the offer. 27 projects are currently in design. And if you look at the screen, you'll see that very few projects from cycles 1 and 2 and 3 are still in design. And as you get closer to cycle 6, more projects are in design. And we have the same pattern for construction. A lot of projects currently are completed with construction and are in their performance evaluation stage. And close out 46 projects. And I want to caveat this, that this was based on the status as of the 3rd quarter of 2021. Every quarter we go out and we go to all the applicants for every project and get a program status report. And so that when you see this is reflecting of what the status was at the end of the 3rd quarter. This month we will be sending out the next request for the end of the 4th quarter. So this status will always change, and when we get to project performance, you'll probably note more final reports that we have received, but we'll talk about that later. Were there any questions about program implementation?
I actually have a question. Do we have any indication of the reasons behind the rescinding and the declines?
Whenever somebody rescinds their award, is usually accompanied by a letter from the awardee. Sometimes the rescindance is, we do not have the funds for this program, for this project anymore, and we have to rescind the offer. Declines. The declines are typically in the same fashion, except they did not get the award that they were expecting, and so could not move forward with the project. And then there's a 3rd category where they resubmitted based on more available information and a better understanding of the project. And that particular project got subsequently a better award from ALCOSAN.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Real quick, a financial update. Want to acknowledge the assistance from ALCOSAN's accounting department for providing me with this information. Currently, as of the end of 2021, ALCOSAN has dispersed over $11 million in GROW funds back to the municipalities. This is good. Where we're at currently with commitments outstanding, through cycles 1 through 6, we have over $67 million in committed GROW offers. The origination fees, which is 1% of the offers that is pulled out from their first reimbursement application, we're at $164,000. The payments that we have received, as I mentioned before, is a little over 11 million. Funds uncommitted on closed projects. So projects that rescind their offer, or projects where they come in under budget and there's money left over. That money is accounted for in this category, and there's about $5.5 million in that class. So currently, GROW commitments outstanding is just over $50 million. Were there any questions in regards to the financial update?
No, I think that's great. So not only do we put up that much money, it's good that the municipalities are doing their share to match it as well. So I think that number's great. So good job to everybody on that.
Okay, for project performance, I'm going to turn this section over to Andy Potts from Jacobs. He's our program manager. He's leading the Green Infrastructure Source Control Program Management Team. And Andy is going to talk about the project performance, methodology, and how we get to there. And Andy, are you ready?
I am. Can you hear me?
I can hear you fine.
Perfect. Excellent. Well, really excited to be here. I know that the board and this committee specifically has been really interested in delving into project performance of the GROW projects for some time. So we're excited to give you an update here and kind of walk through the process. And it's a little bit of a complicated process, but I think we've kind of broke it up into manageable steps, and we can walk through those. And then, of course, get into the details if there's any questions. So we focus at a high level. We're, of course, looking at projects that are completed, typically with their final report submitted, which includes post-construction monitoring data from the municipality. And then the kind of high-level strategy is to, if possible, if we have really good, highly reliable data, and we're going to get into this kind of defining what that is in a minute here, we'll extrapolate that as best we can to the typical year because so much is based on the typical year. So we'll be looking at million gallons per year of removal, for example. If we have data that's maybe not quite as good or it's harder to extrapolate, we'll look at the unextrapolated monitored removal on a daily basis, so million gallons per day. And then if a project, for whatever reason, is low reliable data, might be it's hard to access a manhole, or the weather was just really outside of the norm or something like that that's hard to account for, we'll utilize the H&H models or other engineering estimates. But then for the purposes of reporting under the consent decree, we would consider those not suitable. And then on the next slide, we'll start describing that in a little more detail. Just an update, as Tim mentioned, a lot of these projects are in the evaluation stage or have been closed out. And so here are the 51, a summary of the 51 final reports that were submitted through the end of 2021 and the breakdown there. And an example, here's the detailed list of all those 51 projects. This is kind of a snapshot of our tracking database. It just looks at the projects that have been submitted. What are the project types? When were the reports received? When were they kind of reviewed and summarized? And then when do they get added into the periodic evaluation of the program as a whole? And as Tim mentioned, there were 46 in that last quarterly update. So we start with, the final report is submitted to ALCOSAN. What are kind of the first steps? Well, one of the key first steps is to look at the as-built information that's submitted as part of that report. So you can see Tim there poring over the drawings.
That's not me.
Right. Because we have to remember that typically these projects are submitted at the 60 or 90% design stage. And so there could be changes that are made either through final design or during construction, field changes and what have you. So first and foremost, we've got to see what was actually constructed. Then look at the monitoring data, both pre and post. And their applicants are also required to submit a flow reduction assessment. So take a look at that and what they've concluded how the projects are performing, the project is performing. Then we kind of take this key step. I had mentioned this reliability because a lot of things flow from this. And so this is important step, and we're looking at a number of things just at a high level. We're looking at the overall data quality. Does it make sense? Are the results feasible, et cetera? The monitoring duration, both pre and post construction. Is the monitoring synoptic or representative of the project, of seasonality, et cetera? The monitored area, that's really critical. Sometimes we can have some very good projects but if they're widely distributed, it might be hard to see an impact down in a larger sewer shed with the availability of the meter accuracy, for example. So looking at how big the monitored area is compared to the project area is really important. Any type of analysis they've done, like hydrograph deconstruction, that can really reinforce the data. And then the ability to extrapolate. So just to put things in perspective, the median monitoring period is about 5 months so far on these 51 projects. So if we're trying to take 5 months worth of data and extrapolate out to a full 12-month year, you have to think about that. And was that data taken in a wet period or a dry period and all those types of things. So a lot goes into that. And then we're looking at comparing it to the application review modeling. Remember, when an applicant submits a project for GROW consideration, ALCOSAN does very detailed modeling to predict the performance. So now we compare what would they see to what was predicted. And if necessary, of course, update that model. If there were changes to design, for example, that need to be reflected in the model, make those types of updates. Then we take this step of actually estimating the flow reduction achieved. And so this is a combination of looking at those the model results, the monitoring results, the reliability, kind of melding that all together and coming up with a range. First and foremost, just a one estimate number per project, and then also a low and high value for that project. Again, based on all those factors. So you can see in the graph there, the blue bars are the low, the gray is kind of the actual expected, and then the orange is the high end of the range on what was removed. We update the municipal website with summary of flow reductions achieved based on that reliable data. So we're taking medium and highly reliable data and reporting that on a 1 million gallon per day removal basis. You can see the last summary from last month. So the 27 projects with the medium and high reliable data are removing over 1 million, or are predicted to be removing over 1 million gallons per day from the system. So pretty significant removal, certainly on an annual basis. Then for internal purposes, there's an annual GROW performance summary that goes through more detail about the performance and performance project by project. And then finally, it's key step here that we're just starting to get into now that we have this set of completed projects, is looking at representing those in the ALCOSAN system-wide clean water plan model so they can be used for future planning purposes and regulatory reporting, et cetera, all the things that the model supports. So with that, that's the quick summary of a pretty complicated process, but be glad to answer any questions or get into anything in more detail if there are questions.
I have a question. In the system-wide clean water plan model, you all had a prediction for what the total anticipated removal was for the green the green projects. Do you know how we're doing in comparison to our predictions?
Absolutely. That is something we do. So we do that comparison from what is estimated to what was predicted. And it varies by project. And then we can certainly prepare, a more detailed answer to that. But in general, the projects have been performing kind of at or above, on average, what was predicted. So I think it's a testament to Tim and his team who set up the program in terms of how to evaluate projects. And so I think there are some that are underperforming, there's some that are overperforming, but on average, they've really been doing at or even above, I'd say, what was predicted. And that will be then reflected in the system-wide model. So if a project was overperforming and it's reliable, then that will be then reflected in the model accordingly too for moving forward.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions regarding the performance evaluation?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay. Believe the last informational item we have is in regards to program guidelines. In the past, last cycle, when we had this, we had announced that there were not expected to be any changes to the program guidelines. However, in this cycle 7, we are going to be recommending that we make one modification to the program guidelines in regards to the program requirement for flow monitoring. I want to reiterate, flow monitoring remains an essential part of the GROW program. We're not trying to diminish flow monitoring at all. But in previous cycles, ALCOSAN was the primary facilitator for flow monitoring, meaning that the municipality was obligated to request flow monitoring services from ALCOSAN, and then ALCOSAN, performed the monitoring, or we were not able to perform the monitoring. However, the demand for this much flow monitoring became an issue because we found that we could not facilitate all the monitoring requests. Either the location was not considered safe. So it became a little bit of an issue, and also the volume of requests. So what we will be recommending in the program guidelines is to change it back to the way it used to be, where the applicant can choose what flow monitoring source that they utilize. ALCOSAN will still make themselves available when we have resources available to perform flow monitoring, but the obligation of coming to ALCOSAN and seeing if we could do the flow monitoring, that's what we're going to change. So it's basically, we're just turning it back to the way it used to be, with the municipality having the choice of how they do the flow monitoring. The data, we are still going to do analysis of that data. It's really no different. It's more of a timing thing. And with the municipal consent order agreements coming around, there's going to be a lot of potential projects out there, and we just simply don't have the resources to facilitate everybody. And this change, and it's a minor change in the program guidelines, will help the municipalities keep the schedule moving. And finally, one of the things that we do want to keep in here is early in GROW, we did not pay for flow monitoring. And then then we made that change to, if we cannot do the flow monitoring for the municipality, that we would pay for one flow monitor. That we're switching, we'd recommend to switch back to giving the municipality the choice. We also wanted to keep this one flow monitoring location as an eligible cost. We don't want to remove that. The municipalities have proven to be very frugal with their monitoring costs, and I see no reason why we should take this financial incentive away from it. And that would be the only potential change. Now, this is not an action item. The action item will be coming in March for this, and we will distribute these potential changes in advance of the next Green Committee meeting. And I also have to finalize my draft and send it to our solicitor for final review. So are you ready, Max?
I have a couple of questions.
Absolutely.
So the flow monitoring is, as I understand it, one of the criteria that we use to basically validate the efficacy of the particular program, correct?
That is correct.
And it's also the means by which we justify the amount of the percentage that we gave them, right, for their project, right?
That is true, yes.
Okay, so I'm wondering, there was a reason why we transitioned from this way the first time to us doing it. And I understand that if there's a capacity issue now, but what did we learn from the first time when we had the municipalities were able to choose their own flow monitoring sources, and how we adjusted our program so that we don't have the same problems that led to us taking this on to begin with?
I think that when we first started the GROW program, we had monitoring the monitoring formatting, the expectations. They were all over the place. How they were coming to us was not in a consolidated manner or a unified manner. I think that once we started pushing the municipalities to start submitting the data in a format that we can quickly analyze, that part's not going to change. When we switched the program guidelines, so we were the ones to do the flow monitoring. When the request came to us and we said we were not able to do that flow monitoring, the municipality then, they did the flow monitoring, but the data quality wasn't diminished. We still were able to utilize that information. And, now we're at cycle 7, and the municipal engineers that would be in charge of this, they're very familiar with what our expectations are. And I don't have concerns about data quality anymore. Everybody is now fully aware of what our expectations are. And it's not like we're not going to be involved with this. We still need to know where they're going to be doing the monitoring. It's just, we want to be sure that we don't lose any time moving forward with requests that now we've got to go out, we've got to ensure that we can or cannot do this flow monitoring, and there's time involved with that. And I want to be sure that we're not the cause of the municipality losing schedule. And that's the only reason why I'm making this recommendation.
So I think, the obvious conflicts, it's pretty obvious that kind of where I'm going when I'm thinking about this. I just want to make sure that, to me, I guess a data quality, there are different aspects of data quality. One aspect, of course, being, are the data readable, as far as if we were to conduct an analysis on them, would they make sense? And then there's also accuracy, whether or not it's actually telling us the reality of what's going on there. And I don't know, I would caution us against just assuming that everyone's going to be honest and proprietous, because we're talking about large sums of public funds that I don't want to be misused or mishandled. And I do understand what you're saying about the time, and we don't want to be the bottleneck, but I'm just wondering, have we thought about, is there maybe even I know obviously the municipalities are not doing this monitoring themselves. So there must be like a third party doing this. I mean, what about the accountability, the flow of information? I know we're reimbursing this, and oftentimes, the client is the client. The person who pays the bill is the client. So I'm wondering, even if structuring the payment different so that it comes from us to the third party, whoever is doing the flow monitoring, so that there's just a level. It's kind of like when you're buying a house and you have a person come and do an inspection of the house. That person who's doing your home inspection, is accountable to the buyer, because they want to make sure that they do a good job. And I guess I'm just applying the same logic here to just encourage us to make sure we're going to be getting accurate data, not just data that of course look good and we can run the analysis on, but that are actually representative of the reality of the data flow, of the flow monitoring.
I understand the concern, Dr. Gilliam. I do want to point out that ALCOSAN is in possession of, and I'm not exaggerating, tens of thousands of meter months worth of data throughout our service area. Mm-hmm. So when we see data, when we take a look at the data, there is going to be some intuitive understanding as to whether or not the data quality is reliable.
Reliability, okay.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't want to. I want to assure you that, there will always be a level of questioning of data that we do not perform. There's always a QA/QC process we always go through. And when things don't make sense on our end during the evaluation process, we go out and we double check and we make sure that things are or are not making sense. A perfect example was in the last cycle, we got flow monitoring data from a municipality. Now this was archived flow monitoring data. They gave to us. It didn't make sense. We went out there. ALCOSAN's crews went into the manhole, performed a quick study, and came back and said, there's no way this monitoring data is representing this project. And we rejected the project. And we discussed this with the applicant, pointing out that we rejected this project because the flow monitoring was not matching up with the reality that we physically saw. So please be assured that we will do our due diligence for monitoring that we do not do. I think this change is more of a function of resources than anything else, and I don't want ALCOSAN to be the bottleneck in this process.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. And that was it for me and the rest of the agenda. Max, did you have anything?
No, I don't know, Tim, did you have the schedule for the next meetings? I know you mentioned March.
I do not recall the schedule for the next meeting. I believe that we were looking at third Thursdays, but I do not recall if that was finalized or not. Joey?
I believe that they have been, Tim.
They have been.
Yeah, I think we all got an email. Sorry, I think we all got emails for the dates.
Okay, so the next Green Committee meeting, I will be sure that the next meeting, and that looks like
17th.
March 17th.
Yeah, March 17th.
Nice. Okay.
Do you guys know that's St. Patrick's Day? Just
I was just gonna say I'm wearing green.
throwing that out there. That's a great meeting for the Green Committee, though. That's a perfect date.
The flow monitoring going.
There will be drinks flowing. Yes, there will be. That's a good point. Yes. All right. Well, with that, thank everybody for attending, and we will adjourn the